I've been there, I've been with the troops, they are doing a fabulous job. I think we have to have a better political solution in Iraq. This last week we got a bipartisan bill passed to have federalism in Iraq. I call it a soft partition. You keep it one country, but you let the Kurds run the north, the Sunnis run the west, the Shia run the south, with Baghdad as the federal city. Because we're not going to solve the Sunni-Shia fight. No matter how dedicated we are to it, we're not going to solve the Sunni-Shia fight. We don't need to solve that fight. We need to let them have some space. I mean, and they just don't get along. And that's the whole deal. And we passed that with 75 votes this week. We can do this. We can get these basics. I'm a basics guy. I believe that if you get the basics right, the country prospers. If you get the basics wrong, you don't. And what you don't get done with the basics, you fill in the slots with government. So if you have a broken family structure, you have a culture that doesn't honor what's good, you start filling in the slots with problems with government. And woe to the person hugged by the government. The government has stiff arms and a cold heart. If any of you have been hugged by the government, I haven't met anybody that's been hugged by the government that's happy afterwards. It's not what we want. We've got to do this different. We've got to get the basics right. Vince Lombardi, great coach of the Green Bay Packers, would start every season holding up a football. And he would say, "Men, this is a football." I always think that's a funny thing you tell in Bart Starr, Jerry Kramer, "This is a football." But he did it because you've got to start with the basics. We went from there to blocking and tackling. We've got to do the basics. We've got to get our family structure right in this country. Right now, 36% of the children born in the United States of America are born out of wedlock. 36%. In Washington, D.C., the number is 56%. In most inner cities, it's 70%. You can raise a good child in a single-parent family. We should celebrate it when it happens. But the best place to raise a child is between a mom and a dad bonded together for life. That's the best place. And we know that. We know it from the social data. We know it in our hearts. My wife and I are trying to raise 5 children. And also, I think it's a silly debate whether it takes a family or a village. We will take every responsible adult we can get for our children. If any of you want to move to Kansas and help us out, we accept. We need them. But you also need a mom and a dad, and it gets tough to talk about. And I want to be very candid about this. It is tough because we have had so much family difficulty in this country. But that doesn't mean it's something we shouldn't talk about. Because if we will rebuild the family structure, we will improve our educational system results, we will reduce poverty in America, and we will reduce crime. If we get the basics wrong. And that doesn't mean to say that every 2-parent family is great, raises great kids, or that every single-parent family has bad children. It's not true. It doesn't work that way. But we do know on a macro scale, and I do know as a person that sits in the U.S. Senate that seeks to be president, the more children in the next generation I can get raised in a stable family environment, the fewer problems I have to deal with. And the less I have, the more problems I have to deal with, and somebody didn't like that. Or that was the first envelope. We've got to rebuild that. I think we've got to get our economy going. And here I want to talk about 2 things in particular on the economy. One is the energy, and one is growing the economy. We need to be energy secure in North America in 15 years. We need to get this done. You cannot do this without having dependence and use of our own energy resources, such as what you have here in Wyoming. We had Ahmadinejad from Iran, who's in the United States this week. If he and Chavez in Venezuela get together and decide we're going to shut the United States off, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. We've got to develop our resources, including ones here, including nuclear, including ethanol and biodiesel and wind. There's all beautiful wind farms here in this state. In my state, we can do these things, but we've got to be purposeful about it. And every dollar we send overseas generally goes to somebody that's not our friend. And every dollar we spend here is somebody that is our friend. And we can do it in North America, and we need to do it. I think we also need to go to a different tax code. This tax code should be taken behind the corner bill. I'm pushing an optional flat tax system. I think we ought to give people the option, saying here's a flat tax between 15 and 20%. You choose. You want to stay in the current code? Great, that's your choice. Here's another. There's personal Social Security accounts as a way to grow the economy. Personally, people invest. Social Security doesn't work. My kids, they're flipping these signs up here, and I've got several things I need to cover because we've got to secure our borders. We've got to build a fence on the southern border, and we've got to do more interior enforcement for us to be able to move forward. And we've got to renew the basis and realize that faith is a good thing in the United States. And I want to just conclude on this point. For years now, for 40 years, we've been trying to drive faith out of the public square. And then they had, after 9/11, they had one of Billy Graham's daughters on national television. I thought she said a great thing. They asked her, said, where was God on 9/11? Where was he? And she said, well, we ask him not to be in our schools. We ask him not to be in our public squares. We ask him not to be at our graduation exercises. We ask him not to be at our football games. We not only ask, we say, you're not welcome here. And you want to know where he was on 9/11? Faith is a good thing. You cannot understand America without understanding faith. You can't understand the Founding Fathers and their belief in maximum personal liberty and personal governance without understanding faith. You can't understand the abolitionist movement without understanding faith. You can't read Abraham Lincoln. A house divided will not long stand. I wonder where he got that idea. Well, you can't understand the civil rights movement. You can't understand things in this country moving today without understanding faith. It is a good thing. It is our motto. In God we trust. We should invite it back into the public square, not to say that. As we're talking about basics, we've got to get life right. Every life at every stage is beautiful, a unique child of the loving God, period. It's from the moment of conception until natural death. And I'm talking about being pro-life and whole life. From the very beginning to the very end, the child here, the child in the womb, the child in poverty, the child in Darfur. That's an expansive view of the sacredness of life. It is a basic. We have got to get it right, and I want to be the president to appoint the justice that is the final deciding vote to overturn Roe versus Wade. This is the greatest nation in the history of mankind. In these presidential races, we're always out talking about problems, and we have plenty of problems, but I hope we don't ever lose our ideas of looking up. And Ronald Reagan really taught us this. This is the greatest nation. 5% of the world's population, 20% of the world's economy, a third of the world's military spending, and 40% of the research and development budget for the world. Because my kids would say, this place rocks. I mean, it really does. This is an incredible place. We should always be thankful that we live here. But to whom much is given, much is required. And that's why so much is required of us. And Tony Blair addresses a joint session of Congress not long after 9/11. He went off his notes at one point in time. He said this. He said, I know somebody in the United States right now in Idaho or New Mexico, someplace I haven't been but I'd love to go to, is saying, why me? And why now? Why is so much required of this country and of us, and why now? And he said, as only I think a Brit could say, because it's your time, and it's your destiny. And I believe it is. I believe in American exceptionalism. I think this is a special place with a special duty in the world, and that we can do it if we get back to doing our basics right. That we honor life, that we rebuild a family, renew the culture, grow this economy, and have the will to sustain ourselves in this generation-long fight we're in with militant Islamists. We can, we will. I want to be the president to do it. Thank you very much.